What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and we are talking about Bitcoin Cash today. Shout out to the Dragon Riders. Shout out to the House of the Dragon. You guys, it is Monday for me. It's going to be Tuesday for most of you, or at least for the charts. If I'm on the daily here, it's Tuesday. Beginning of the week, got the new week going. I want to go over some things that we could expect to see this week and potentially over the month of May for Bitcoin Cash. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. I am going to pause the music so that we can be a little bit more focused. This is not the normal atmosphere, right, that we're used to. I'm sure a lot of you saw this yesterday, but this will be my last day making videos in this garage. It's just my current dwelling. Although I gotta say, I kind of like it. I'm like forced to stand. There's no chair for me to sit on. You know, I kind of like standing. I like this. It's a nice bright room. I can be loud. Maybe not too loud. I don't want to be loud for you guys, but it's. I'm not going to wake up my baby if I'm too loud, if I get too into it, you know. Anyways, guys, let's get started. I'll be back at home base tomorrow. This is the last day that you'll see this kind of atmosphere, but we'll get back to the cozy living room of C-Zar in just a second. But anyways, Bitcoin Cash here. On the daily, if we look at it on the RSI, the RSI to me looks pretty sad. It looks like you want to go lower, right? We can see it's different now than it's been in quite some time, right? If we really were to compare it to anything, I would compare it most to like this phase right here. And we can kind of look at what price did back then too, to maybe associate a potential dynamic or heading that we could see. Whereas these phases throughout all this, basically up until our most recent phase here, we've bottomed at the 40 area, right, at the lowest, and we've maintained readings above the 50 pretty easily, right? If we were held down by it, we weren't held down by it by long, you know, and here we've got lower highs, lower lows coming in. We came up, rejected the 50, kind of as we did here, right? We actually went even a little bit lower back here, but I do want to compare. Not that this is at all the same readings as what we're experiencing now. It's not the same thing, but to somewhat of a degree, just kind of maybe a similar heading. So if we're looking at this here, you know, you can see that we were just marching our way down, right? Marching our way down. And as we got to this oversold area, which we barely pierced through, but we did pierce through it, that was our low. And it happened to be below this green line, the 123 daily moving average, which we're well away from right now. And also, we're at a pretty decent distance away from the oversold zone as it stands. Now, that 123 moving average is sitting at $377. As the days go on, that will increase. And I mean, we could look at it. Let me try to do it real quick. Since Thursday last week, it was at, is that Thursday? That is Thursday. It was at 368, and then went up to 370, and then 372, 374, 375, 377. So it's moving up like $2 a day. So if we're at 377 right now, and we stay a decent distance away from this, I would assume that, what if we're doing two? We want to try to make it up to like $400, right around there. So that would be another $23 from here ish, $23, 11, so 11 days. So potentially, what I'm getting at is if we multiplied 11 times 2, because each day we're growing $2 on this moving average. So that's where the 2 comes from. 11 to give us 11 times 2 is 22, which we're essentially $22.50. If you look at it over here, it says 377, $22.50 away from 400. So 11 being the days that we would need, $2 being the amount of growth that we see per day on this line, potentially, just rough estimates here. 11 times 2 would equal about $400 for this green line. This green line, the moving average would be at $400 in approximately 11 days is what I'm trying to say. So being that it is April 30th on the charts right now, it could be as early as like May 10th or May 11th that we see this low come in for Bitcoin Cash. If it were to kind of repeat similar circumstances that we've seen before throughout really all of these lows, which is just below that green line, right? Whether it was a minor low here, a pretty significant low here, relatively significant low right there, honestly. This is a bit of different times. We're in that long phase of accumulation, right? I would think that we're going to hold the daily 123 moving average as support. We probably do go a little bit below it. I believe that price is just below this line. However, wherever it is, by the time we interact with it, whether it's in 2 days, whether it's in 11 days, whether it's in 20 days, whenever we interact with this line, and I would assume it's going to be sooner than 20 days, probably within the next 2 weeks, it could be a week to 2 weeks specifically that the price goes down here. So it could happen this week, though I think not. I do think that 11 days sounds about right. About 2 weeks from now, maybe even just a little bit less than 2 weeks from now, is when we could interact with this line. Of course, by that time, and the reason I'm being so repetitive is because I know how numbers can be confusing. You know, I'm talking about the numbers, I'm running through them in my head, but you guys are hearing them. Like, if I ever hear someone talk numbers, unless I'm writing it down on paper, it can be confusing. So that's kind of why I'm going through it now. In 11 days, if this is up at about $400, you know, that might be the perfect time to buy. So what I'm really trying to say is get your money in order if you're looking to buy. You know, maybe be patient, maybe hold the line, maybe just wait, because again, this daily RSI does look a little bit sad. You came up from the bearish area of control, got out of it, but rejected the 50. Now we're back in the bearish area of control. We're below the 40. Generally speaking, when you look like this, I don't give you a solid chance of holding above the oversold zone. I'd give you a solid chance of actually going into it, or at least to it. So something like this or lower. And this kind of move, if we were to see that, the best case scenario would be that we just prod through the green line. We really could go lower than $400. There are multiple price targets below there, and we'd still be fine. But I do expect that we're going to hold that $400 level, and I want to go over more than just the moving averages as to why I think that. So actually, I might leave it on a daily here. So looking at this day here, on that low, that relative low to this relative high here, $400 would be right at about the 786. Okay, we've been holding the 618 for a while now. Generally speaking, how I go about the Fibonacci retracement tool in my own analysis is the more interactions you have with the 618, the better it tends to be normally for your maximum potential low. I'll explain what I mean. So if you had one interaction, right, this is your first interaction right here, and you bounced. Okay, that's a good thing. If however you broke through the 618, if you broke through this line, the 618 right here at 459, instead of bouncing here, you broke through it, that would mean we'd be looking at targets like this, generally speaking, right? So in my experience, and I've been doing this for over 7 years now, at least heavily involved with technical analysis, I've been doing this for 7 years. Whenever you break through that 618, the golden ratio on the first attempt, these extension areas become likely. We haven't done that. In fact, we held that area once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, whatever. We're holding it for the 4th time now. We'll probably break through it soon. Generally speaking, when you see this, it will break. You've got the flat base, you've got the descending highs, all the bearish formations to promote the idea that you'll go lower. The daily RSI looks like crap. And then crypto as a whole right now, we're in a phase of consolidation, so it makes sense. But what it does mean, what the positive to this is, we can expect to find a low, in my opinion, between the 886 and the 786, between there. And as days go on, this 123 moves up, right? Maybe at that trajectory, maybe at a lower trajectory, like whatever. If we were to kind of intersect with that area, this would be a perfect area right below the green line, as we've seen before, and then also lining up corresponding with the 786 and 886, which makes sense also because we've held the 618 so many times. So I hope that all makes sense. I know I threw a lot of numbers at you. A lot of you have been watching the channel for a while, so you probably understand the dynamics that I'm displaying here. Some of you might be new and it might be confusing. I'd encourage you to continue to just keep watching the videos. It'll make sense, man. It's like a language, right? You don't understand a single word the first time you hear it. It sounds like they're speaking at the speed of light, whoever they are, in whatever language, right? And then as it goes on, you pick up some words, like, okay, I heard this word, I heard that word, like I kind of know what that means. And then eventually you learn the language, you learn how to read this, or at least understand what it is that I'm reading. And I know a lot of you understand what I'm saying. And I know that there's a lot of you who also don't. You know, I don't know everybody's level, so that's the main reason why I'm trying to go into greater lengths to explain this, because I know how that can be. Hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I think that's the most that I want to say for the short-term stuff. Now I want to look at the long-term real quick. Yeah, because I think that all makes sense to me, man. The 886, just so you know, is at 378. And if we take all this away, right? Take all this away, you make it invisible. That's like where we found our support before. So to come down, find a higher low in this area, that would look good for multiple reasons as well. But we could go a little bit below $400 and still be fine. So if we break $400, don't be scared. be prepared to buy. That's my kind of thoughts right now. I'm definitely going to be buying below 420 personally. I've DCA'd, I've bought in some below 600 up here on this drop, below the 382, like right below the 382 here, and I bought in some along this 618, but I haven't even thrown half the bag that I want to at this thing yet for the cash that I have on the side. I will probably DCA really hard the rest of like the cash that I have on the side, specifically for BCH. I'll probably start putting it in at 420, layer it down here, and then I don't know, man. I'll probably just layer it until about $400. If it hits the 886, I'm gonna just be okay with that little deficit for a tiny bit. I'll be happy, man. I'll be really happy to buy around $420 to $400. So that's probably my personal strategy. Not financial advice, literally letting you guys know what I'm doing with my money whenever it's time. But of course, if that plan changes, I'll let you guys know. There is one more thing I wanted to go over to kind of illustrate the significance of this area as well. If we take this relative low on a weekly basis, right? Before we were on the daily, now we're on the weekly. We've also got our 382, pretty significant level right there at about $409. So that also comes in line. You can put that line right there at the 382. And oftentimes with your first interaction on the 382, you go a little bit below it. So a little bit below it is that like 370, 380, 390 area. So don't be scared if that happens again. But previous support back here, found resistance right below that line there, support in this area. You know, there's a lot of things on this chart that kind of correspond. You can see right there, right before we had that big death gap to the downside in Bitcoin Cash's first bear cycle, right? There's a lot of significance right at that $400 area. So the fact that we're above it, I think, says something in itself. And if we can hold it as support, I think that would say something as well. And we can hold this level as support and see a wick down. We could see prices go all the way to 340, man, or 350. It could happen and still be fine. As long as we close a week above here, as long as we're holding that and not breaking through it, the time spent below that line, if it happens at all, is very small. I think we'll be fine. Okay, so I hope that all makes sense. I feel like I just went on for a long one there, but shout out to the Dragon Riders one last time, man. We're in it for the long ride. We're here, man. Through the boring times, through the exciting times, through the boring times, and through the exciting times. And we're down 31% this month. Beautiful to see. 20 hours and 57 minutes left. Yes, I said beautiful because, man, that's a 31% discount for anyone like you and me who wants to buy some more Bitcoin Cash before we really see some major prices. Using the relative fib here, from the last cycle's high to low, you can see Bitcoin Cash, man, I've said it plenty of times, it loves its 6.9 area, right? It went a little bit above it, but man, it loves that 69% area. It really, really does. And I've gone through, I used to do this all the time when it was more relevant. It's not really relevant now because we're going to be talking about extensions, not retracements. Maybe in another video I'll go over it, but you can measure, if you go on the weekly, you can measure all kinds of areas. You'll see Bitcoin Cash really does like that 69% area, if not right at it, like literally right at it, just a little bit above it like we saw here. Back below your 618, that's okay. You know, even if you close the month down here, that's okay. We've got the 0.5 also. I just want to mention that at 377, illustrating the potential to go a little bit lower than $400. Finding resistance up here, coming down and finding support on the 0.5, absolutely possible. Something to consider. But the main thing that I want to talk about, sorry, I have to keep clearing my throat, man. It's annoying. It's annoying, guys. That's okay, though. It's okay. The minimum extension that I would expect us to see would be $3,650, $3,650 to $10,000. This is your expected fib range based off of this move here, right? Based off of this move that we're seeing here. There are targets that are higher. We have the 1886 at 22,170. We have the 2272 all the way up at about 69,000. And these targets, I want to say, are absolutely possible to hit this cycle. Absolutely, they are possible. However, I would say the 2272 is probably a lot less likely. The 1886, we have a decent chance of seeing, I think. I'm actually kind of curious where. Look at that. We kind of stopped right between the 1886 and the 127 or the 2272 of this move here. Not really anywhere. Maybe like directly at the 200 level, but just showing that we can break through relative 1886s, if that makes sense. So I personally do think Bitcoin Cash is going to go to 20K by the end of this cycle, but that's this relative fib here. Okay, 22K being the target that I probably most likely believe, even though this is the realm of expectations. This is what we would expect to see. And being that we closed above the 618, and yes, I want to just say something real quick, because I'm sure there's people out there who are like, oh, he's just ignoring this, even though this is the expected range. He's just ignoring this because he wants to see 22K. I want to see 22K, but I do believe it's going there. It's not. I'm not just saying that because I want to see it. I'm saying that because if I had to bet money on where I think the price is going, I really do think 22K is where we're going to be going, if that makes sense. Although this, by a formal definition, would be the expected area to go. So if that sounds too crazy, if you can't wrap your mind around 22K, at least wrap your mind around 10K, potentially $3,650. Though I don't think we're going to stop there. I think we are too developed. We're showing too much strength right now to just stop there, man. Like, I mean, it could happen. I guess at that trajectory, right there, literally just like that, we could stop there. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're going to move up faster than that, is my thoughts. What I was trying to say is when you break above the 618 on your first attempt, I'm getting all over the place here, but when you break above it on your first attempt, generally speaking, these areas are locked in. They become not probabilities, but likelihoods on your first attempt. And we did break through it on the first attempt. However, we've broken back below it, so I would say this kind of negates it being a likelihood, puts it back on as a possibility. I do accept it as a likelihood still, just in my own personal opinion, but by the formal definition, again, it's still just a possibility. Now, however, if we can get next month or the corresponding months after to close above the 618, the more months we can get above there on this next attempt, that would bring the likelihood up for these areas, just in the more relative time frames. Just something to kind of keep in mind. So I know I've been going over a lot, man. I'm talking a lot, but I'm going to post it. We're just going to go with it. Who cares? All-time high to all-time low. I would say this fib is also very significant to look at. We tipped last cycle the 786. We found a little bit of turbulence around the 382. We even found resistance on it and found support on the 236, a very classic maneuver when reaching up to the 618, which we almost did. I'm surprised we didn't reach there. Generally, I would expect that you do, but that's okay. We almost did, man. We really almost got up that high. But we are clearly still, even this cycle, showing respect on these levels. The 069 is not a fib level. Okay, it's a level that I've identified as significant within this range. Same thing as the 69. It's not a fib level. Okay, it's just a number. It's just a number. Yeah, but it's a number that I do find significance on, and apparently Bitcoin Cash does as well. Based off of this fib, based off of the all-time high to all-time low, the minimum expectation would be 13K to 23K to potentially even 53K. These are all expected numbers based off of the Mac Daddy fib, which I would consider from the all-time high to the all-time low. Not just that, but also in one cycle, and still respecting it years later, cycles later. I would say this is the Mac Daddy fib. This thing is something to keep in mind throughout this cycle, right? We've had our first attempt with the 618 and we clearly rejected it, okay? So if we broke above it and we stayed above it, this would have been a likelihood, okay? But we didn't. It was not. It's now a possibility. It's just not a likelihood. We are coming up now for our second attempt. Now, this is crucial. Breaking above this area on the second attempt is what will drive the difference between this area being a likelihood or a possibility, okay? And being that I do believe we're going to go up there by the end of this cycle, we're going to be in this range, I would say that the likelihood that we break this 618 on the next attempt is strong. So we haven't quite had that interaction yet. We got close, but we just didn't do it. It's probably better that we didn't go up and reject, because by my formal definitions, by my rules that I've kind of developed over time, again, over 7 years, interacting with this again and rejecting, that wouldn't bode well for extensions. It's not impossible to happen. It can happen. You can have 2 rejections off the 618, 3 rejections even, and then inevitably see your extensions. But if the more reactions that you have with that 618 area that are negative, the more likely you will have turbulence in this area as well. So not that I don't expect that we, I could see that we have turbulence around here, around 1800 to 2700. We absolutely could. But I don't think it's going to be our cycle high, where if we find resistance here at this level again, and we pull back to the 500 or to the 0.5, 561, or even all the way to the 382, if we come down and do something like this on either of these moves, there is a solid chance that this could be the cycle high, which is dramatically lower than the prices that I'm calling for, man. So with that all in mind, guys, this slew of things that I've been saying throughout this whole video, I think it's very critical that Bitcoin Cash smashes through $907. I think it's very, very critical. So hopefully we can do that. Hopefully that happens. For the time being, I do think that we're going to refuel. Anybody who wants to catch a ride on the next green dragon, as it were, we're going to be doing that at the land of $400. We're at $463.95 now, so we're just a couple hillsides away. But once we get over those hills, man, we're down. We're down to $400. We're ready to load up and go higher. And that's the best attempt at an analogy that I have for tonight, I guess. I don't know if I have anything else that I want to add, you guys. I've said a lot. I'm sure I lost people along the way. If you're still here, hit that like button and subscribe. If it didn't make sense to you, hit that like button and subscribe. And if it did make sense to you, you know what to do. You definitely know what to do. It's more or less just the same rendition, but all together, talking about the potential highs and then just the low areas that I've been expecting now for probably a couple weeks, if not at least a week. And, since I've been back, I forget, man, if before the cruise, if I said that we were going to go to $400, I forget. I might have mentioned it, but I might not have put like a heavy amount of thought into it. I don't know. But I do think we're going lower, guys. Rather immediately, within the next 11 days, potentially. If not 11 days, it could be, a week to 2 weeks or sooner or later. But specifically, I would think that like 11-day marker, which for right now, that'd be around the second week of May, around the 10th of May that we'd see that. I do apologize, man. My voice has been scratchy this whole time, and I don't know why. But anyways, guys, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to stop blabbering. That's all I got. Hit that like button. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.